Welcome back to the second lesson in the Claude Cowork for Beginners Made Easy video course. Now let's look at the topic of security, right? Because if you're going to send an AI agent onto your computer, you're afraid what it might do, right? It could delete data, it could share personal details, will it steal your password? So there's all kinds of security concerns. And in this video, we're going to look at how Cowork was designed to avoid most security issues, but also things that you really need to be careful at when you're using Cowork. So, how does Cowork keep your computer safe? The answer is to be found in the Sandbox security model. So basically, Claude Cowork operates in a sandbox. Imagine that your AI gets its own room on your computer, right? It has kind of a sandbox in which it can play and it can safely do things without causing greater damage or worries beyond that sandbox. So you could say it is a craftsman in a garage workshop. You give the craftsman a key to the workshop and only the workshop, right? The rest of your house is locked. Bedroom, office, filing cabinets are all off limits. The craftsman works with the materials that you provided, and when the craftsman is done, meaning when Cowork is done, you get to check the work before accepting it. That's really a great metaphor to think about using Claude Cowork on a computer. So here's just a visual illustration for this. The Sandbox security model basically creates an isolated workspace. And that is the working directory or the project folder, right? Because when you open Claude Cowork, as you're going to see, you first decide a specific folder in which it is going to work for this task. And by doing that, you make sure that it can work on your computer, it can store files, it can edit and change files with the files that might be required for this project, but it does not go beyond that, right? If Cowork couldn't access files on your computer or it couldn't create files, it would be pretty useless. But if it worked beyond the folder that you give it access to, it could be very dangerous. And that's why we work with a project folder. That basically is the sandbox in which Claude Cowork can work. Meaning, as you can see here, as a user, you grant temporary contained access to a selected folder only. The AI cannot, I repeat, it cannot access your surrounding system, right? So imagine here, system files, personal data, web browser cache, email cloud, all of those are off limits and it does not access them. All right, so once again, another illustration. Again, I just want to drive home, like, it's really, really important that you understand this concept of the folder access, right? It will all make sense once we go into Cowork and I show you how you select a project folder and it only works with that. But Cowork gets access to one folder on your hard drive for each task, right? And you could start a new task and give it access to a different folder for that specific task. But it's only working in that folder. It does not go beyond that, right? That also means, however, that you need to structure your task in that way, and maybe you need to prepare files in a certain way, right? So what you need to keep in mind is it is session specific, right? So once you close Claude Cowork, some of that stuff might be deleted, right? It will not delete the files that it has created, but certain data for that task will be deleted when you close Claude Cowork on your computer, maybe because you restart your computer. There's no memory between tasks, right? So Claude now has personal memory that remembers details about you, but it does not have a memory between specific tasks, right? So when you want to continue a task or project in a new task, you would have to brief it basically on what the project is and how it works, right? And you get to choose every time. Every time you start a new task, you can pick your project folder for that task. Same rules apply for the browser access, right? Because you might be afraid if you let the agent loose in Chrome in your browser, is it going to delete emails from your inbox? Is it going to access websites that are dangerous? Is it going to go somewhere and maybe submit sensitive data about you that you're using in the browser, right? So there's probably even more security concerns when it comes to browser access than when it comes to your local computer. But let's look at what Claude Cowork can actually do and what it cannot do. So Claude Cowork can search the web for information. It can visit public websites. It can read articles and documentation, and it can gather research for your task. There are things that it cannot do, and that's for good reason, right? So Claude Cowork cannot access your saved passwords. I think that's pretty good. It cannot visit banking or personal websites. It cannot read your text messages, and it cannot access private account data, right? So privacy concerns are out the window. There's no need to be concerned about privacy given these features and restrictions. Next thing that we need to talk about, which I think is very important to internalize, is the so-called plan, review, execute cycle, right? So nothing in Claude Cowork happens without your approval. So let's imagine you go into Claude Cowork and you tell it, for example, you give it access to your downloads folder and you say something like, hey, Claude Cowork, my downloads folder is a mess. Please look over the files in this folder and then create a folder structure that makes sense, that is logical, that I can understand, and then move the files into the subfolders so that the whole downloads folder is neat, orderly, and clean again. You could tell it explicitly, first, please create a plan how you want to categorize the files, and then let me approve it. But generally, it is going to go and plan the whole task, right? So it will have to look at the files, and then it is going to give you a plan about the folders it wants to create. And maybe if you wanted to, it could also rename the files accordingly to make them easier to find. And then you can look at that. And maybe you like that, maybe you don't like it, right? So Cowork will analyze your requests and then create a detailed plan of action. You can look over it, try and review, you examine the plan and approve, modify, or reject it, right? You can just talk to it or write. If you say, I want to change it this way or that way, tell it. It will come up with a new plan. And once you have a plan, once it has a plan that you like, you can just approve it, right? And then if you approve it, Claude Cowork is going to execute it. But again, only after your approval, Cowork is going to take action on the files, right? The most common example being that it orders files and in a folder for you. So that also basically means that you need to think iteratively, right? So give it a task, let it give you a plan, and review the plan until you like it. And only then you approve it, and then it's going to act on the plan, and you will get the result that you want. Here's a different way, just a better visualization of it. So a safe and controlled AI agency happens within that plan, review, execute cycle, right? You give it a task, Claude Cowork comes up with a plan. You can review the plan until it works, right? You can tell it to change things. If you like it, you approve it. And only then, Claude Cowork will execute on the plan and you will get the output that you like. So, one more thing. What are some hard limits? What are things that Claude Cowork is not allowed or not able to do? The first thing is, again, it cannot access files that are outside of the project folder or the working directory that you have selected. It cannot permanently delete files without your confirmation, right? So if you want to delete some files for whatever reason, there will be a message in Claude Cowork asking you to confirm that you want to delete this file. What it cannot do, right, especially given in the browser in Chrome, it cannot access passwords, it cannot access banking info, and it cannot access personal accounts. However, what it can do is it can use websites that you're logged in, right? But that is useful because otherwise it couldn't help you with your email inbox or other websites that you're working on. What Claude Cowork cannot do is install software or modify system settings, right? So if that was necessary somehow, it would tell you that this might be necessary, but you will have to do it, right? But that's good because you don't want to install software that you're not aware of, and you don't want it to change system settings. So then there's emails or posts publicly without first asking. So you can use Claude Cowork and Claude in Chrome, for example, to draft emails for you, or you can also let it send emails for you, but it will ask you to approve sending of the email. So usually what you should also prompt it to is like you can go to Gmail, use Claude in Chrome, the plugin, and then say, I don't know, please find the last 5 emails written by Pete Sampras and go and draft me a reply to each one of them in polite tone, but rejecting of their offer. Or I don't know, right? But you can tell it to find those emails and then draft a reply, but it will only draft them. You get to look over them and you get to send them, which is probably the way to be. Otherwise, the risk is too high that it might send something that is out of context or not what you want. So once again, these are technical limitations, not just guidelines. So Cowork is not able, it is physically, you could say, unable to do these things. All right, that's it for security in Claude Cowork. And in the next video, we're going to go right into Claude Cowork, and I'll give you a tour of the interface you're going to find your cockpit, you could say, the command center of Claude Cowork. Let's go.